Wow, this one's a popular topic, and I can understand why, because I would love to know more about a synthetic respondent. Interesting question, and one that Colin and his lovely panel that are going to answer certainly get us thinking about it, because it's a question I've been asked, it's something that I've been thinking about. And, oh dear. Thank you. So, introducing Colin Strong, who's from Ipsos, and for those of you who already don't know, he's in charge of the Delphi report. I encourage all of you to have a read, and Colin, I think you've got all the answers for us. If not, you're certainly going to be getting us thinking. Over to you, Colin. Thank you very much.
So good to see you all. Actually, I was just saying just now, I think this is a panel which is less about having all the answers and more about thinking about the questions which we should all be asking. So there you go, guys. You're off the hook. It's okay. So I think, isn't it funny, don't you think, that there's sort of moments in our industry where things seem sort of fairly stable, fairly predictable, fairly known, until they're not. And then it all changes, right? And maybe COVID, it just cast your mind back, was one of those sorts of moments where suddenly we're sort of cast into this sort of very alien environment. And, you know, didn't we get sick of this term unprecedented? You know, it's just like, ban that word, don't have it in PowerPoints anymore. You know, and, you know, is this a new way of living, or, you know, are we going to go back to normal? And here we are, you know, but sort of back to normal, sort of not. Cost of living crisis and geopolitical changes, you know, another pivotal moment for all of us, and agendas changed, topics shifted, focus of our work and analysis we're doing changed. You know, are we still in it? You know, have we moved on? And here we are, AI, generative AI, but not just generative AI, synthetic respondents. You know, there's been so much chatter about that today. You know, is this fundamentally changing the whole dynamic and structure of our industry, the way in which we do everything? Or are we going to have another hot topic at this conference next year? I guess we don't know. You know, is this the equivalent of the printing press, which is, you know, routinely sort of touted as making radical changes to the way in which we live? Or is this the spreadsheet? Kind of handy, but you can hardly say that it's necessarily revolutionary, although, you know, some may beg to differ. But you know, we're in this kind of liminal space right now where we're all sort of looking around, we're all a little bit uncertain, we're all trying to work this out. So to help us map out this liminal space, as I say, not necessarily have all the answers, but sort of try to sort of work our way through this, I'm really pleased to be joined by three people who I really know and respect. So there is Rose Tomlins, who's Head of Brand and Customer Insight at Virgin Money, Patrick Alcantara, Head of Insight at AXA, and Deborah Harding, MD of the MRS and leads Standards Policy Public Affairs activities. Okay, let's dive in. So, I'm going to start with you, Rose. I think this is the unfair, really difficult question that nobody really wants to be asked. But synthetic data, it's a bit Blade Runner, isn't it? You know, what is it? You know, do you want to sort of start us off on that one? And I know Rose from old, so I know I can get away with asking all these difficult questions.
Yeah, I'm your guinea pig for.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
You know, I think, you know, it's a bit of a step change, isn't it? We've been used to talking about AI. I think synthetic respondents is taking it on a gear, isn't it? It's talking about the possibility, and it's the real possibility at the moment of generating actual samples of respondents at scale that really mimic all the different parameters you want to put into that, you know, no matter how nuanced or hard to find they might be. Being able to use that sample to access and assess, you know, degree of accuracy, you know, the huge array of data that's out there and mimic real life data and responses. And, yeah, it is a bit Blade Runner, but it's now. So,
it's now,
yeah.
right. And anything you'd add to that, you guys?
Yeah, I think the important thing, though, is in order to be able to create synthetic data, you need really, really good human data to be able to build it from. And it was interesting, I thought this morning when, during the opening AI debate, there was a discussion about the fact that large language models are based upon using lots of copyright material to be trained on. Well, synthetic data is basically using participant data to learn and to train from and to create models from. And so it's a very similar process, but of course the difference is that it means that the power actually of synthetic models really rests with those that give us the data, which is with participants, and we shouldn't lose sight of that.
That's a really key point, isn't it? And Patrick, what's your anything to sort of add to that? And also just want to kind of like talk hype cycle. Where do you think we are on all of that at the moment?
Well, for me, I do see it more as like, just building on from the points that we had earlier. It's more about us being able to fill the gaps in terms of insight or knowledge about the customers that we want to serve. And it's not something that's completely alien to us, because we do that as market researchers. I mean, you do a conjoint, for example. So we do it all the time. And I guess the only thing that potentially puts some people off is the fact that, it's quite new, and it's quite new. You're talking about stuff like artificial intelligence, for example. But in reality, I do see it as an extension of the things that we do. Whether we are at a stage where it's something that's going to be like fully used or fully realized, I'm not so sure. But then again, I work for an insurance company, so we do tend to be quite a bit behind the curve in other things, because we are in a risk-averse industry, and we tend to really consider the risks before we start adopting things. But I'm sure in other industries, they're probably more advanced, or a step or two ahead of us.
I suppose to pick up your point about the fact that, well, surely this is something we've always done. And I think that's I saw Ray Pointer, who I saw him around a bit earlier on, maybe he's in the room today. I can see him at the back there. He is waving. So he made a very good point in an article about sort of listing out all the different ways in which actually we have done this as a research industry. So in some senses then, is this evolution of that, or do you feel this is a bit more step change in its nature, Rose?
I think it's a really good point that it is, I think we've talked about earlier, it's been around for a while, the concept of AI, it's nothing new. I think it's a step change in how it could be applied. I mean, it's interesting that both myself and Patrick are in similar industries. I don't know, maybe it's a Virgin brand or it's being a challenger mentality. We're already having those conversations around how, synthetic data could actually start, changing the way we think and do work in the business. And I think what's been really transformational about it all is that we've started to look at opportunities where we haven't got the customer present in decision making, but we'd love them to be, and we'd love to involve them earlier, and how we can start using things like AI and synthetic data to bring them in earlier, so we can sort of have that sense check on, well, what do we need to be asking and what do we need to focus on, so we can just fine-tune and streamline, I guess, our research investment.
I really like that point. And by the way, questions welcomed. We will go out and invite questions shortly. But if you have any which you want to ask now, then feel free to ping them in there. So I guess that's what we're all sort of trying to think about. What are the use cases? I mean, there's the obvious use case in a sense, isn't there? Of we don't actually need to collect any data anymore. Is that are we seeing that the use case is fundamentally the death of the survey or qualitative research, as we know it? Or, how do you see it? So you see it as a bit more in terms of thresholds.
Yeah, I think it's probably interesting. We have the same challenges. There's huge amounts of regulation. We have to build frameworks internally to decide when we test the consumers and when we don't. And what's quite interesting is those frameworks are built with humans, but often not with the customer present to tell us, actually, that is a bit tricky. I would like you to go and ask us about that. So it's that first pass for me. It's that sense check. It's that other person in the room breaking down the four walls and challenging you to think a bit more broadly, even before you get to the research planning stage. And really being able to sharpen your investment and challenge your stakeholders to think about. It might seem like quite a boring, interrogative piece of work, but it's really important because it's a vulnerable audience, or it's someone we don't speak to enough, for example.
So a kind of first pass in a way. And Patrick, is that how you see it, or do you see it a bit differently in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think that's a really good concept about sense checking and, you know, being able to establish, you know, the first pass of, in terms of like how you like go about with asking questions to people. So for example, in the financial services industry, so we do have a big piece of regulation called the Consumer Duty. It's all about building good customer outcomes. And when you try to build good customer outcomes, you often have to think about audiences that are vulnerable. These people may not necessarily be readily available, or some of the topics that they're talking about may not necessarily be things that they would love to talk to you about in the first instance. So this is where you can potentially use synthetic data to then say, right, you know, what are the things that I would have to watch out for, and potentially help me ask more intelligent questions to the people I'm talking to, so that the data that I get out of them would be of much better quality, much more actionable, things that, you know, would be able to help me move the dial in terms of what, you know, what a good customer outcome is.
Okay, so I'm going to say 2 words. Mark Ritson. I think many of you probably read his recent article in Marketing Week in typical Ritson form. And he was saying that perhaps we're going to see lots of people publishing findings suggesting that it really very close to survey results, other people saying it's not, and, you know, giving reasons as to why it's not. How do we square that, Deborah?
Going back to the point I said before, which is, first off, for synthetic data to be successful, it requires lots of participant data anyway, as the core of it. So that doesn't go away, because the other thing about a model is it doesn't stay still. You have to keep refreshing it and input and then the knowledge of the system. So that means you're going to continually need to have some kind of primary data that's input into the model. So that doesn't go away. I think also the thing is, just saying the word synthetic data, synthetic participants, what automatically happens is people say, but I want to talk to real people. That's an automatic reaction. And I would say this, reflecting on sort of nearly 25 years in the research sector, is that whenever there's been a new innovation, technological innovation, people have said it's the death of quant, or it's the death of qual, it's the death of the survey. It comes around every time. And actually what has happened is, as technology has grown, certain types of research techniques that involve people, meeting people face-to-face, qualitative, all that, they have stayed steady. And the reason why they have stayed steady is that there is still a constant demand for that real person. And so I don't see synthetic data replacing any of those kind of techniques. I think the mix will be different, and the way that the research is undertaken will be different. But the need for people and the need for us to continue to protect participants will continue to be an important part of research going forward. That's my prediction, in my sort of, you know, golden ball.
Sounds like we're all about golden balls today, I think. Yeah, crystal balls, golden balls. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to ask ask the panel some sort of fairly quick fire questions. But if you have a question yourself you would like to pose, we do have a question here. So actually, I think this is a good moment, and we can always come back for me to throw. We've got a mic coming. So, thank you.
I've actually posted it in the chat stream anyway, but as you said, as time goes on, people's opinions change because of external influences, such as economic, COVID, media, etc. How do you keep your synthetic data up to date?
I don't know if anyone wants to sort of, I think that's a comment which you're also making, Deborah, right?
Yeah,
and Rose, so.
And I think that, you know, it goes back to needing both, right? And I think, you know, one of the use cases I've seen being sort of, that has the most momentum behind it, perhaps internally at the moment, is the concept of living personas. Because that's something that's been built from real research, it's been validated, but we can't afford to keep them up to date every single day. So you use synthetic data to ask it those interrogative, slightly dull, tiring questions that you need to answer to get due diligence out. But there is an implicit responsibility there that that living personas need to be kept fresh. They need actual research to make sure they don't go out of date, and the two have to sort of work together in harmony. And the one thing I can say is, as you know, someone that's buying research and synthetic data, I would put much greater trust in an organisation that is great at both, can vouch for the integrity of both, that knows how to challenge data and understand it and make sure it's thorough, they've questioned it, and they can storytell and present it back to me in a holistic way.
And lots of questions popped up on here. I just noticed after I asked for hands up, and so I just to say that thank you for that question, because it actually reflects a lot of the questions in the room, and I think it's kind of quite useful for the room to understand, well, what are we all asking? Is it just me, or are other people asking these questions as well? Phil from Verve is asking a characteristically punchy question. What steps should clients and agencies take to bridge the gap between real people, given the growing prominence of bots and AI farms in online research? Oh, this feels like a Deborah Harding question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think actually this does bridge over to data quality very much so. It's clearly essential that when you're doing anything like this, that you're sure that the people are people. And so you need to be doing all the kind of validation and data quality checking necessary to make sure that that is the case. But in terms of how the projects are approached, it should be approached in the way that every single project is approached, which is to think also that anything that is going to be done legally and ethically, and making sure that you get the appropriate permissions in place, that people understand what's happening with their data and how it might be used in terms of these synthetic models. Because if we kind of lose that part of the equation, then actually we're ruining potentially a lot more than just not being able to do synthetic data collection, but actually research more generally. So I think we always have to go back to the basics. They're always the same. The ethics of research is the same whether you're doing synthetic data, qualitative data, mystery shopping, or whatever else you're doing. And we mustn't lose sight of that.
And I think that plays to a lot of the questions which I'm seeing on here about governance. So there's questions around, how do you differentiate between synthetic and real respondents? How do you validate truth in an ever-evolving synthetic data set, or do we just embrace the fact that it's dynamic? How should we propose training synthetic data on vulnerable audiences? It feels like there's a lot of questions about how do we go about managing this. And I'm going to sort of just go back to I'm just really not proud of myself quoting Ritson twice in one session, but he said that the market research industry is a useful source of quotes. Let's face it, anyway. The market research industry is already responding to the suggestion of synthetic data with all the grace and humility of their cigar-chumping forebears from 19th century American railroad industry. So, okay. Are we? I mean, and what do we as an industry need to be doing? Because it feels like we've got a lot of questions. Patrick, I'm going to just throw that little easy to answer thing over to you. I mean, what are you looking for? You're a client, you're commissioning research. What do you feel the market research industry needs to be doing right now? And this is like for all of us in this room, because there's a lot of questions about this.
So I guess it's worth stepping back first and thinking that AI, or like say synthetic data, it's fundamentally a human product. So as with anything that's produced by humans, it would be great for us to then start thinking about or interrogating how do we produce that data in the first place, and making sure that when we use synthetic data, we're doing so in a way that does not propagate our biases or our existing prejudice, because fundamentally it is a human product. It is our product. So that means being able to say, right, could we be upfront about the methodology that we have used to arrive at the answers that you're telling us? Could we look at auditing algorithms being used to feed those systems, making sure that they don't carry our biases or prejudice. Could we train the data, or could we train the system with diverse data sets to make sure that you have a rounded out knowledge of, of what's going on? And for me, those are fundamental things that, for me as a client, I will be asking people who would be providing me those solutions. And if you are able to answer that question, then it would give us more, it would give us a bit more assurance that, right, synthetic data is pretty much, the way I see it is, it's another tool. It's another tool in our toolkit. And for me, as long as we are sure what's going on in producing that, then great.
Okay, great. We're pretty much on time, so I'm just going to ask the panel for their thoughts on, are we going to be here next year discussing the same topic, or are we going to be moved on to something new? Rose, same topic or something new?
I think it'll be the same topic, and I'll be co-presenting with my AI chatbot.
Not sure I'd be co-presenting with the chatbot just yet, but hopefully we would be in a position to discuss some of the applications next year.
Nice. Deborah?
I would say that we will be sitting here knowing that MRS has got some lovely guidance on this topic, some great training courses, and a lot of people know a lot more about it.
Super. Look out for the Delphi Group is doing more work on this space, putting more thought, leadership into this. Just getting a sense of the questions from the room, I think, and hopefully I've tried to sort of share those back as much as possible. I think that is as much as helpful as anything, because as a community, this is something which is absolutely going to absorb us significantly over the coming weeks and months. So thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you very much, my panelists, and great to be talking with you. So thank you.